In a tomb sealed for 3 millennia, British archaeologist Howard Carter made a discovery that would never make it into textbooks, not gold, jewels, or the treasures that made headlines around the world. What Carter found nestled against a mummy's preserved flesh was a collection of artificial genitalia, crafted with meticulous care for eternal pleasure, alongside papyrus scrolls containing sexual spells so explicit that the expedition's translator refused to complete his work. You may think this as primitive ignorance, but this was the world's most sexually sophisticated civilization, where crocodile dung served as birth control, where magical sex dolls were buried to compel unwilling lovers, and where pornographic scrolls revealed a society drunk on both pleasure and power. Our journey begins in the scorching heat of 1825 BCE, in a physician's chamber, where the acrid smell of burning incense mingles with something far more unsettling. A woman lies on a reed mat, her face contorted in concentration, as the healer prepares a mixture that would make modern doctors recoil in disgust. The healer carefully measures honey, golden, pure, sacred to the gods, into a golden bowl. Then comes the sour milk, curdling in the desert heat. But the final ingredient transforms this from medicine into a powerful concoction, fresh crocodile dung, still warm from the sacred pools of the Nile. What you just heard is the Kahun Gynecological Papyrus, the world's oldest surviving medical text on women's health. Its recipes reveal a civilization that understood the chemistry of conception with terrific precision. The crocodile dung's alkaline properties would create a hostile environment for sperm, while the honey acted as both antimicrobial agent and sealant. The sour milk contributed lactic acid, forming a chemical barrier that modern science confirms as effective contraception. But this was never just about medicine. As the woman receives her pessary, a tampon-like device soaked in this unholy mixture, she recites incantations to Taweret, the hippo goddess of childbirth. The physical and spiritual merge in ways that would define Egyptian sexuality for millennia. This is contraception as ritual, medicine as magic, the bedroom as battleground between human desire and divine will. Yet even as some women sought to prevent pregnancy, others pursued the opposite with equal fervor and far stranger methods. In the shadows of the same medical chambers, aphrodisiac recipes were being concocted that would challenge the boundaries of sanity itself. Fennel and figs formed the foundation. Innocent enough. But then came the additions that reveal the true depths of Egyptian sexual desperation. Crushed mandrake root mixed with sparrow fat, and, most disturbing of all, a hare's womb. Fried in bronze and blended with honey, crocodile dung, and myrrh, a natural aromatic resin obtained from the bark of small thorny trees in the genus Comifera. The instructions were explicit. This mixture was to be smeared directly onto the object of desire, transforming seduction into a form of magical assault. But the recipes grew darker still. Some called for materials from the deceased, dandruff scraped from murder victims, barley stolen from graves, ground with blood or semen into potions that promised to inflame passion beyond all reason. Here, in these forbidden formulas, we glimpse a civilization where love and death danced together in the most intimate spaces. As night falls over the Nile, we see a desperate woman named Taromiwe through the narrow streets of Roman-era Egypt. Her footsteps echo against mud brick walls as she clutches a handful of silver coins, her heart consumed by unrequited desire for a man named Kephalas. She does not seek for a love potion, instead she desires for something far more sinister. In a dimly lit chamber reeking of decay, a priest of Anubis begins crafting what scholars now recognize as one of history's most sophisticated examples of coercive sex magic. On papyrus made from reeds that grew in sacred pools, he inscribes a spell that will haunt Kephalos with supernatural lust. The words themselves seem to writhe on the page, cause that he make the circuits of the foreleg constellation, until you cause that he make the movements of the night time, until he looks for Taromiwe, mad about her. What you see here is not a mere love spell, but but a spell bound to strip Cephalus of his free will and reduce him to a creature of pure sexual compulsion. The ghost of a necropolis dweller, commanded by Anubis himself, will torment him with visions and desires until he surrenders completely to Ptolemaeus' will. The spell explicitly aims for subjugation and sexual domination, revealing a dark undercurrent in Egyptian magic, where consent was merely an obstacle to be overcome through supernatural force. But Ptolemaeus' commission represents only the beginning of Egyptian sex magic's twisted evolution. In workshops hidden from public view, craftsmen were creating objects that would make modern sex toys seem quaint by comparison. Wax and clay figures, anatomically correct and disturbingly detailed, were being fashioned to represent desired sexual partners. These dolls were vessels for the most invasive magical practices ever documented. The instructions, preserved in the Greek magical papyri, read like a manual for psychological warfare. Make 2 figures, male and female. Make the male as Ares fully armed, the female with arms bound behind her back and on her knees. Then came the true horror. 13 copper needles were to be thrust into specific body parts while reciting the victim's name, each puncture accompanied by commands that would shatter their mental defenses. I am piercing your brain so you remember no one but me alone. These dolls were buried near the target's home, accompanied by spells of breathtaking cruelty. Drag her by the hair, by the guts, until she no longer scorns me. Do not let her eat, drink, sleep, rest. The language reveals a civilization where sexual desire could justify the most extreme forms of magical violence, where the bedroom became a battlefield where souls were won and lost. Yet even as Egyptian magic plumbed these dark depths, the civilization's artists were creating something equally shocking but entirely different in intent. In the workers' village of Deir el-Medina, where the builders of royal tombs lived and labored, a masterpiece of satirical pornography was taking shape that would scandalize scholars for millennia to come. The Turin erotic papyrus, stretching over 8 feet in length, presents 12 explicit sexual vignettes that initially appeared to be simple pornography. Bald, paunchy men with grotesquely exaggerated genitals copulate with idealized, elegant women in positions that would make modern viewers blush. But this is no mere arousal aid. This is social commentary disguised as erotica, a savage critique of class and power wrapped in the language of lust. The men in these scenes are deliberately depicted as lower-class caricatures, their bodies grotesque, their sexual vigor absurdly exaggerated. The women, by contrast, are portrayed with the refined beauty typically reserved for goddesses and queens. This juxtaposition was intentional, designed to mock the pretensions of manual laborers while simultaneously celebrating their sexual prowess. The expensive papyrus itself signals that this was entertainment for the elite, a way for the upper classes to laugh at their social inferiors while secretly envying their supposed sexual freedom. French Egyptologist Jean-François Champollion, upon first viewing the papyrus, declared it an image of monstrous obscenity that created a really strange impression about Egyptian wisdom and composure. His shock reveals how completely this artifact shattered Western assumptions about ancient Egyptian sexual restraint. Here was a civilization that could create the most sublime religious art, while simultaneously producing pornography that would be considered extreme by modern standards. But the Turin papyrus was merely the tip of an iceberg of sexual expression that permeated every level of Egyptian society. Throughout Deir el-Medina, archaeologists have uncovered thousands of ostraca, pottery shards, and limestone fragments covered with explicit sexual sketches that revealed the true nature of Egyptian bedroom culture. These casual drawings, tossed away like ancient graffiti, show a society where sexual humor and explicit imagery were part of daily life. The ostraca depict every conceivable sexual act with a frankness that would make modern pornographers blush. Women are shown in positions of power and pleasure, sometimes with other women, sometimes with objects that serve as ancient sex toys. The drawings are accompanied by hieroglyphic captions that blur the line between flirtation and parody. "Gentle is the charm of my skin," appears alongside images that are anything but gentle. These artifacts reveal a profound truth about Egyptian sexuality. It was not confined to the elite or the sacred spaces of temples. In the mud brick houses of ordinary workers, sexual pleasure was pursued with the same ingenuity and enthusiasm that built the pyramids. Personal love spells and erotic amulets, particularly figurines of the dwarf god Bes, were as common as cooking pots and work tools. Magic was not just for pharaohs, it was a daily part of household management, including the management of sexual relationships. The Hekenarcht Papers, a rare archive of domestic correspondence from the Middle Kingdom, provide an even more intimate glimpse into Egyptian sexual politics. These documents reveal household heads who maintained sexual access to female servants alongside their official wives, creating complex webs of desire, power, and exploitation that echo through the centuries. The texts refer bluntly to both consensual and non-consensual relations, exposing undercurrents of sexual servitude that were carefully written out of official records. Yet perhaps the most shocking aspect of Egyptian sexuality was its integration into the very foundations of royal power and religious practice. At the annual festival of Min, the pharaoh himself performed fertility rituals that involved symbolic masturbation and ejaculation, ensuring the Nile's inundation and Egypt's continued prosperity. These were not private acts, but public ceremonies, witnessed by thousands and recorded in temple reliefs that survive to this day. From all these that you've gotten to know so far, what you're about to know next is the epitome of these bizarre rituals, the king's sexual performance. Yes, the king's sexual performance was literally tied to the nation's survival, creating a direct link between the royal bedroom and the cosmic order. Evidence of some murals found suggest pharaohs collecting the essence of life from ithyphalic deities, transforming divine semen into state policy. Gender fluidity was more accepted in religious contexts than anywhere else in the ancient world, with gods and goddesses changing sex to suit metaphysical narratives that placed sexual transformation at the heart of creation itself. But even death could not end Egyptian sexual obsession. The mummification process included meticulous attention to genital preservation, with artificial penises and vulvae crafted for mummies whose original organs could not be saved. These were not merely symbolic, they were functional, designed to ensure the deceased's sexual pleasure in the afterlife. Explicit sexual scenes were carved into tomb walls, guaranteeing eternal satisfaction for those who could afford such luxuries. The boundary between life, death, and sexuality was deliberately blurred in ways that modern minds struggle to comprehend. Erotic spells were placed inside graves to activate ghosts' agency on behalf of the living, creating networks of supernatural sexual influence that stretched across the divide between worlds. The dead were not merely remembered, they were enlisted as active participants in the sexual struggles of their descendants. As we emerge from the shadows of these ancient bedrooms, we carry with us a profound truth about human nature itself. The Egyptians, for all their monumental achievements and spiritual sophistication, were driven by the same desires, fears, and obsessions that define us today. Their crocodile dung contraceptives and magical sex dolls reveal sophisticated responses to eternal human dilemmas. In their willingness to blur the lines between sacred and profane, love and power, humor and horror, the Egyptians created a sexual culture of breathtaking complexity and disturbing honesty. They understood that the bedroom was where civilization's masks fell away, where the raw truth of human nature expressed itself in all its beautiful and terrible glory. Their legacy whispers to us across the millennia, reminding us that beneath every great civilization lies the same fundamental truth. We are all, in the end, creatures of desire, forever seeking connection, pleasure, and meaning in the brief span of our mortal lives. The Egyptians simply had the courage to admit it, to celebrate it, and to preserve it for eternity in the most intimate spaces of their world.